Hello everyone and welcome to another episode of Gautam's Cooking Adventures. In this episode we will make Thalapakatti Biryani. My wife will be very proud that I said it right this time. But it's a very different biryani unlike what you've normally had. This one is not made with the basmati rice, which is traditional rice used. It's actually made with a special rice. And we'll talk about that as we go further down into the video. Enjoy! The Thalapakatti Biryani originated in a small city called Dindigul in south of India and is sometimes referred to also as Dindigul Biryani. Before we start all of the cooking, we need to make a paste that we will require as we cook. So in order to make that paste, it consists of some mace, some cloves, some green cardamom, bark of cinnamon, some onions, and a bunch of chilies, green chilies. Now obviously this is going to mean the green chilies will define how spicy it's going to be, and you can decide whether you want it more spicy or less spicy. We typically like it spicier, so that you can adjust according to your taste. And last but not the least is the ginger garlic paste. Now having said that, I want to point out that we will also be using chili powder at some point of time. So it's important that we have a fair amount of green chili because that provides the flavor which is required in the biryani. You can adjust the red chili powder as well for the spice level. We've also chopped approximately a cup of coriander leaves and another cup of fresh mint. Now the quantity of onion that I showed you is not the entire amount. We do need to chop some more, and I'll give you that in the ingredients list. So it's a lot more onions that's chopped, and we will now put them all into the mixer, and we're going to grind it into a fine paste. The paste has been ground. So now going back to the rest of the items that we need, starting with the mint that we have already cut and I've shown this to you before, the coriander that we've cut and I've shown this to you before. Now we need yogurt, and that's about a cup and a half of yogurt. We'll need lime juice. This is juice squeezed from approximately 2 limes. That is ghee, oil, salt to taste, and chili powder to taste. What makes the Thalapakatti Biryani different from other biryanis is the rice that is used. Unlike other biryanis where basmati rice is used, in this case, the rice that is used is the Seeraga Samba variety. It's a very small grain rice, as you will see, much smaller, and it has a very different texture to it even when it is cooked. Now the rice will be washed and soaked for about half an hour to soften it. We have about 2 kilograms of rice here. And last but not the least is the mutton. In this case it is goat. And it's about 2 kilograms of goat that have been cut into sizable portions and have been washed and kept aside. Today we will use a combination of an open stove and also the instant pot to complete our biryani. So to start with, we have this large dish specifically designed for biryani purposes. It's a large white dish, shallow dish, and we're now starting this on the stove, keeping the flame at medium high. We're now going to start adding the oil and the ghee mixture to it. That's the ghee. And vegetable oil. Both were in equal quantities, approximately 4 tablespoons each. Wait for the oil to heat up well, and then we will add the ground masala paste to this and allow that to cook. The oil is hot now. We're ready to add the masala paste, but in the meantime, we're also turning the stove down to medium or little less than medium to avoid the mixture from spluttering in the hot oil. Just a safety precaution. Also ensuring we're not overcooking the masala in piecemeal as we add it all together. Stir the masala well into the oil, let it all cook evenly. This will take a little while. The masala will start to change color somewhat, it'll brown a little bit. That's when you know it's ready, it'll give out its aromas. The cooking will continue till all the raw smell of the onion and the ginger goes away, and it's only left with the cooked smell, which is nice aroma. We have increased the flame in order to cook it. Now that we are stirring it, it will cook evenly even as we have a higher flame. The mixture has been cooking for about 6 minutes now. As you can see, it's starting to reduce in the quantity, but it's also becoming a better mixture. It's starting to turn browner than it was when we first started. It's not yet ready though, it takes a little more time. It's a continuous process of constantly stirring it while it's cooking. It's been a couple more minutes and the mixture is finally done. It's turned a nice brown. The raw smell of the onion and the ginger is gone. It's now got a really nice flavor and aroma about it. It's now ready for the next item to go in, which is the mutton, the goat in this instance. Remember that once you finish washing the meat, it needs to be drained of all of its water so that the meat is pretty much dry at this point in time. It doesn't have any external water source. And the reason is that the meat itself will give out water, and you want the mixture, once it's cooked, not to be too much of a gravy so that it does not make the rice become too soggy. Nicely mix the mixture into the meat. Let it cook so it can take in the flavors of the masala while the meat also cooks. Remember, we're not adding any water at this point of time. Like I said, the meat will give out water, and you will start to see that there's more liquid forming in the pan as you're cooking it. We're now going to turn down the flame to a medium flame once it's well coated, and then we're going to cover it and allow it to cook with its own juices. Now, the reason we are not necessarily looking to overcook it but just start the cooking process is because we are going to transfer this to the instant pot where it'll actually cook to its final stage. At this point of time, we just want to ensure that the masala is nicely taken into the meat. It has cooked just a little bit. Allow the moisture to form, and that way we know it's ready for the instant pot. Now we check constantly just because we want to ensure the masala does not catch at the bottom. As you'll see in this case, it's just starting to catch in certain spots, and that's what we want to avoid because you want to keep turning it, ensuring it's cooking. We don't need the lid to be closed just because the meat needs to cook in a sealed environment, but we need to keep checking from time to time. Traditionally, this would have been cooked on the dish and would have taken forever most for the practical cases. So that's why we will move it to an instant pot where it'll cook much faster. It's been about half an hour since we started the soaking process for the rice. So while the meat has been cooking, the rice has been soaking as well. As you can see that the rice level has risen to just a little over the water level. It's ready now for it to be cooked. But we'll still wait for it to absorb some more water while we cook the meat. We've opened the lid, we're checking on the mixture, and you'll notice that there's a lot more liquid that has formed now, which is the meat giving out its liquid, and the meat has been cooking in itself. So it's getting to the point where we'll be adding some additional stuff, we'll doing some more processes. But in the meantime, what we have done is we have drained the water from the rice. The rice is now ready, and can be used for the biryani later. The reason the meat has been cooking in its own juices is because it adds to the flavor. It's now ready at this point of time to add the rest of the ingredients. Salt to taste. Now, quick tip here is we're not adding any salt into the rice. Since rice will absorb some of the salt, we are going to be adding salt that will make the taste of the meat extra salty at this point of time. So something you might want to keep in mind as you're going through the cooking process. Next we will add the chili powder. Now this is again dependent on how spicy or how less spicy you like it. You can add the quantity. In this case we are using approximately 1.5 teaspoons of chili powder at this point in time. Mix it in thoroughly. The mutton is best with the bones because the flavor from the bone, the marrow, also adds to the flavor of the final biryani mix. Now that it's fully mixed in, we're going to add the mint leaves. Mint adds the sharpness to it. Coriander flavors it. Mix well. It's key that you mix this at every stage, ensuring that the flavors of all of the ingredients that are getting added in get properly absorbed into the mutton as well, and the curry that's forming below it. Now that it's properly mixed in, we're going to start adding the yogurt. Yogurt adds a certain level of sourness to it and a very unique flavor. It's almost like a contra to the rest of the spices and helps to make the flavors of the spices stand out better. Yogurt also has water in it, so as it cooks, you'll find that the liquid content is increasing. It also changes color somewhat to a lighter color. Now you'll notice that we have not added a single drop of water into the mix so far. All we've been doing is cooking the meat in its own, in itself, and the liquid that the meat has given out. And as it's been cooking, the amount of liquid has been increasing in the pan. The yogurt definitely added to make it a lot more liquid than before. So the reason we are doing all of this is to ensure that we're not getting too much liquid at this point of time. We want to ensure that we are just about right. If we need to add any water, we can always add later. So that's the tip here, is be careful how much you add and what you add. We might want to now taste the mixture and see if it needs any additional salt. Like I said, at this point of time, you want to ensure that the salt content is higher than usual. So we're going to add just a little bit of salt. To adjust the mixture to the level that we want. Like I said again, we want it more salty than normal because once we add rice to this mixture, the rice will also absorb some of the salt. Now, one thing to remember is amongst all of the components that I showed you in the beginning, lime juice has still not been used, and we will keep that till the last. The meat has to completely cook before we add the lime juice to it. And the lime juice will add an additional level of sourness and tartness to it. The stove is still at medium high, and we are going to wait for this mixture to start boiling a little before we transfer it to the Instant Pot. You'll notice that it started to bubble, boil. Oil is getting separated and starting to form a layer on the top, and it is now getting ready for its transfer to the Instant Pot. We've just made a check on the level of fluid. We think we'll need about half a cup of water additionally to this, because at the end of the day, this is what's going to happen. The liquid that is on this meat is what is going to be used to cook the rice. When we put the rice in, it cooks in, it takes the flavors from the liquid. And so we want to ensure that there is enough liquid to cook the rice, but not excessive where it will make the rice mushy. We're going to start transferring to an Instant Pot. So first into the Instant Pot. Vessel. All of the mixture has now been transferred into the Instant Pot. And the next stage is to cook it in the Instant Pot itself. We're going to cook this in the Instant Pot on the meat stew mode. It's for 30 minutes. So now that it's been set for 30 minutes, we can put the cooker lid on. Ensure it's put to the pressure mode so the valve is closed, and just let it cook. It's the beginning of spring, and so this is a perfect time for me to start my gardening as well. So I've started to get the saplings ready from seeds. This is this is eggplant, the small purple eggplant. That's rosemary there, getting ready to root. And this is what's called dondakaya. And of course I have lemongrass that I'm trying to root as well, so that I can grow the lemongrass plant. I pretty much like to grow most of my vegetables in my own garden. It makes it much easier to get at. The cooking time is finished. We're now going to open the lid and check the meat. Now, as you can see, the meat is cooked. Now what we're going to have to do is to separate the meat from the rest of the mixture. We are going to have to measure the amount of liquid, because that's how we will measure to ensure we don't overcook the rice. We're starting to measure the amount of liquid that there is in the mix. And transfer it to the biryani handi. The liquid will determine how much rice we're going to be using in the mixture as well. We've completed measuring the liquid. It's gone to about 5 measures at this point of time. We've measured out 5 cups of rice, and so we need a 1:2 measure in terms of liquid, rice to liquid. So it has to be 5 cups of rice to 10 cups of liquid. In this case, 5 measures of rice to 10 measures of liquid. So we're adding more water into the mixture to increase the volume to that required level. Now that we've added the water into the mixture, This is when we have to check the salt again to ensure that there is just the right amount of salt to flavor the end product, which is including the rice. An helpful tip at this point of time would be, it's always better to err on the lower side of salt as compared to excess. You just want to make sure that we don't go overboard with it. If you are running short of salt in the final mixture, one way to make up for that is to just add a little extra salt in your raita. You're anyway going to eat it with the raita, that will kind of compensate for it. Too much salt might actually cause it a little more of a problem to bring it down later. We have the mixture of the masala, the liquid alone, currently cooking on a high heat. We're going to wait for it to start boiling before we add the rice to it. Now, oftentimes biryani is served with boiled egg in it, so this might be a good time to start making your eggs. The number of eggs is up to you, depending on the quantity. So you need to just boil eggs and keep them ready. The mixture has now come to a nice boil. This is when we will add the mutton into it. Remember, the mutton was already cooked earlier in the instant pot. Now that we've added the meat into this mixture, it needs to boil again. It needs to be brought to a boil once more. Just the first boil before we add the rice to it. As a final measure, we've checked for the salt, made the adjustments to it, and also added some additional mint, only because we just like the taste of mint to come out better. This is optional. You can also make adjustments to the spice levels in terms of if you want to add any additional chili powder to this. All of that can be done now. This is your final chance. Now, at this point in time, we still have not used the lime juice, and that will still be held till the end, used only after the rice has been put in. The mixture has just started to boil. This is when we will add the rice to it. The rice will be mixed into the whole mixture and not layered like in some of the other biryanis. We've completely added all of the rice into the mixture now. Give it a good stir, let it all blend in well, and then allow the rice to cook. We're going to add the lime juice now that the rice has been blended into the mixture. Give it a quick stir, and then keep the flame on high till it comes to a boil, at which time we are going to cover the dish and lower the flame and allow it to cook. While we're finishing cooking the rice and the biryani, we've started making the raita. Raita basically is sliced onions. It can be sliced any way you like it. Typically, it's done in thin slivers, or can be diced into small, tiny bits. Some chili to your taste. Again, in this case, we've used one onion, and we used 2 split chilies, and then cut them up into small bits. What we will need also is salt and yogurt, which we will add subsequently to complete the raita. The mixture has started to boil now. The rice is cooking in within the meats, masala, and the liquid that it has exuded along with water. And now we're ready to allow it to cook in a close flame. We're going to reduce the flame down to a medium, and then cover it and allow it to cook. We will now allow this to cook for about 4 minutes, at which time we will open, mix it thoroughly, then put it back and on a closed flame again and cook it for another 10 minutes. At which point of time we will complete the cooking process, but there's still another process to complete, which I will let you know as we progress. We're adding a little bit of salt into it. Just basically allow it to sit, allow the onion to give out some of its liquid from inside, it sweats. And what that does is allows the flavor of the onion to get into the whole mix when the yogurt is added to it as well. We've also added the chili to it. We're now going to let this sit for a little while. It's been a couple of minutes. You can see that the onion has started to sweat, and this is when we start adding the yogurt to it. The quantity of yogurt is entirely dependent on your taste. This amount of onion, you will probably use a cup of yogurt. You could even thin it down if you want with a little bit of water, again up to your taste. Give it a nice mix and then let it sit for a little while. It's a thick mix at this point of time. We could add some water into this, thin it down a little bit. That's about the consistency that we'd like here. Now it's ready. We just let it sit. Now, the amount of salt, which I would normally suggest you start with a lower amount of salt initially. Depending on how your rice turns out, you can then add salt to this if you need to compensate. It's been about 4 minutes since we covered and cooked it. We're going to do the intermediate mix. Ensure that the rice from the bottom is brought to the top so that it cooks evenly. Remember, at every stage we want to ensure that the rice and the liquids don't catch at the bottom. That's very easy to happen when you're cooking things like this, which have a starchy base or an oily base. We've completely mixed the rice, and now we're going to put the cover back on again. We're reducing the stove to a lower flame so it can cook for the next 10 minutes. At this point of time, we'll wait till it finishes, and then we'll have to follow the final step, which I will let you know as we proceed. Now, this is the very simplest form of raita with the very basic materials in them. You can always be creative, add more stuff like tomatoes. You could have other things that go in to flavor it. We're just keeping it simple at this point in time. It has been 10 minutes now since we put the lid on and cooked it. We're checking the rice now. The rice is pretty well cooked now. It's just slightly grainy. Now this is perfect. What we want at this point of time is to allow for all the moisture to also evaporate. We're giving this a quick turnover to ensure that the rice at the bottom does not catch. we're going to switch the stove off. And cover the dish once again. This time remember the stove has been switched off. We're going to allow this to sit for the next 20 minutes, during which time the rice will absorb any excess liquid. At that point of time, the biryani will be ready. For now, the raita is ready as well. The eggs are boiling. We will shell them once they are boiled and keep them ready. It's been 20 minutes since we closed it and allowed the rice to cook. As you can see, it's become much drier now. The rice is fully cooked. The biryani is ready in all respects at this point of time. Now one could easily garnish it in any way you want. For example, just simply adding some fresh coriander leaves, fresh mint leaves on the top could make it look prettier. But this is Thalapakatti Biryani, which is typically a very rudimentary, it's a village style biryani. So for all practical purposes, it is ready. And here's the final plating. As you can see, there's an egg on top of the biryani, there's raita on the side, and that's all you need to eat it with. Bon appetit, enjoy. Please remember to subscribe to our channel, share it, press the like button, and definitely click the bell icon so you are notified of all future episodes. Thank you so much for watching. See you next time.